Hello, everyone. Welcome to Media Crash episode 16. Today, we are going to be talking just about the historical genre. There is obviously a lot of history that just, are made into different movies and video games. So we're going to be kind of just talking about some of our favorites and also talking about like games and stuff that kind of like games like Civilization that span over huge eras.
Like all of human history, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess just right off the bat, we can all talk about like what our favorite like historical genre is. I don't know if you want to start, Matthew.
Like what Holden said, there's a lot of different settings, and what it's interesting when you do a story in a setting is you're able to like tell people inadvertently without being boring what it was like to live at the time. So like you'll have like a story, like a murder mystery of like hunting, what was the guy, Jack the Ripper, in the 1800s, and you could just inadvertently show like how detectives in that time period were able to track down a serial killer and how that would work, even though I don't think the whole point of Jack the Ripper is no one caught him, right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
You get to see a very ineffective
it makes sense.
Detectives did their job.
But for me, I have a niche sort of, but kind of broad historical moment I like to listen in on, which is sort of like the late Victorian era, like late 1800s, early 1900s, where like the aristocrats of the old colonial era was still around. Like, it was called the Victorian era for a reason. And you had, I guess Napoleon kind of messed things up for a lot of Europe, and that led to a lot of like revolutionary ideas merging with, and modern technology merging with old, government styles. And I thought that was really cool. So you have like shows like Peaky Blinders. I just watched a movie called There Will Be Blood, which is set around that time when in America, where businesses are just booming without restriction because people realize, oh my God, if you don't if you don't control business, they can just blow up to the infinity. That's when people, I guess, discovered that buying other companies
it's really profitable.
It's very free.
Kind of like, snowball-y like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I just like that era. It's really cool. I'm trying to think of other points. Any World War I movie kind of goes into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
You, Daniel?
Well, what's your favorite period?
I love like kind of early to middle medieval period, oddly enough. Well, not really odd. It's a pretty popular genre. But it's just really cool because you get to see all these really rigid and kind of alien power structures where, it makes sense, we can understand them, but you see it as like pretty wrong for it to just be set up that way, like divine rule and whatnot.
But it's interesting to see how the people just accept that's the way things work. Like, it's such a different, like literally like the opposite of the political compass and how we think things should be run now.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even now, it's like, I'm sure there were people back then that were like sick of that shit, but it's like you're kind of just, that's a system you're born in.
What the whole like divine rule, right?
Yeah,
What's it called?
Divine mandate, I think.
Where they were just saying like they were chosen by God or whatever to
like. I think that the number of people who thought like that were in the minority, because like for a lot of European history, and I'm talking about specifically European early to medieval period, Chinese is a pretty cool medieval period too. So does Japan, actually. Never mind that statement. All medieval periods are beautiful.
All medieval periods matter.
But
exactly. Don't tell me one's more beautiful than the other. A lot of it was based on like divine right. That's why a lot of like pretenders to the throne had to be linked to the royal family in some way, and you didn't really see peasant rebellions installing new leaders all that often, except in places like China, where the mandate of heaven could shift from one person to another. In European history, it was primarily like a more of a hereditary thing.
If it wasn't like directly a king or related to a king, it would just be another noble family that rose to the power.
Right.
Yeah, but it was all still... Yeah, my favorite genre, or just, I guess, historical period and stuff, is probably, like, honestly, like, World War II. just because like there's so many like, I guess like in terms of like movies and video games, it's pretty easy to just like throw in a bunch of like Nazis that you guys, you're just like mowing down.
Man, I don't feel bad about this at all.
Exactly. It's a pretty just free thing to do. And, you have all of the cool, that's kind of when you start having guns and stuff.
Inglourious Bastards?
I have. I actually recently, okay, so as much as I'm just now talking about how great it is to kill Nazis, like
Red-blooded American.
The Inglourious Bastards, I watched it recently, and the first half of that movie, I really liked, in terms of like having that squad that everybody was, even the Nazis feared and everything. But like the ending and kind of just the second half of the movie, I didn't like as much because it did just feel like it was just like murder porn, but for like Nazis, which like, I mean, I don't feel bad watching it, but it was just like, I was kind of like hoping that there was going to like, I don't know. I think like the plot to me, it felt like it just digressed into just killing Nazis.
If I could give my 2 cents about it, I think a whole big point of that, and also a big point of the ending there. Spoiler alert for the ending of Inglourious Bastards. Skip to whenever to skip this. I think a big point of it was, the whole cinema scene. It was basically a Nazi war movie where they were glorifying violence and killing of the enemy. And I think what they're trying to do, or what Tarantino is trying to do, is parallel, that with what we're basically seeing on screen. The Germans and Nazis, they were our enemies. They were the people we identified as enemies, and we're seeing them get killed on screen, and we absolutely love it because, they're the baddies.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's still just senseless killing. I think that's also, well, Nazis needed to die in World War II for World War II to end in any kind of way that was good, so it was still necessary, but it's more pointing towards people's love of violence, I think. Like that guy in the beginning of the movie that the squad captured, the German guy. He had a cross for courage, and he wouldn't give up his comrades in arms in any other army. That would have been a noble man, but, he was a Nazi, and he was captured by our main good guys, so whatever, he's just another body to the pile. That's
and I guess
my personal interpretation anyway.
Like, I guess that's fair. Like, if at the ending he was kind of just trying to show like that it was like all this like senseless killing and stuff, regardless of what side, like, I mean, I guess that accomplished that, because to me, I just looked at it and I was like, it's just all this killing and stuff. So I guess it worked on me, but it still is a part of the movie. So it's like, I get the point, I guess now, but like,
doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah.
But, there are some shows where it's like, oh, the point of the show is to make you feel uncomfortable. And like, yeah, I guess I accomplished that. I don't like feeling uncomfortable, though.
That's like BoJack with feeling depressed, except it's a good show, but like,
I love that show to death, but I can't watch it because every time I watch it, I get back in like the headspace I was in when I first watched it, and don't want to be back there.
Speaking of, to go back on track, but with Quentin Tarantino, another good historical kind of movie, but a bit more recent, it was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I still haven't seen that.
Was I the only one that watched that? Shit.
I haven't seen that.
That one was funny. Like, that's a good example of kind of like historical setting, but like recent. It was, what period? It was during,
wasn't like the 19 something?
It was 67, whatever.
I've never
that guy,
heard of this movie.
What was that cult leader's name in that movie?
We had a lot of cults.
The guy that killed a bunch of people in Hollywood.
We had a lot of cults.
Okay, well, it was some period in time. I feel stupid right now, but it gave you kind of a glimpse of what Hollywood was like back then, which is a lot of like Italian actors and directors, and how they like they showed how the movies back then were just questionably like filmed, like politically correct wise. Like, you have these like, where just a Western guy would just kill a bunch of like Indians, and that was the movie, and it kind of gave you light into that sphere.
Yeah, I think I was gonna watch that show, or that movie recently with Caitlin, and I looked and it was like, yeah, it's just casually 3.5 hours or something. Like, it's like, or maybe not
long?
3.5, maybe it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes,
It's long.
3 hours. But
Like,
it's like
a long movie.
It's a big boy movie.
Like another one by another one by Quentin Tarantino called Django Unchained.
That's
It's
amazing.
Another historical set piece in what do you call it? Like, slavery times in the U.S. set in the Deep South. It's 2.5 hours long.
Which is, it's a Western, but it's made in the Deep South before slavery was abolished. A lot of westerns actually are, after the Civil War, because that's when that was kind of going down a lot. This was interesting because of that.
Yeah, and I guess like, see, that's interesting because without trying to spoil like every Quentin Tarantino movie ever, Django Unchained, it does get a little bit murder porny. But like when I've watched Django Unchained, I liked it in that. See, it's interesting because it's the same thing as like with Inglorious Bastards
Killing
with the ending.
slave owners.
Yeah, but it's Django killing slave owners, and that's the whole movie, so it's not a spoiler. But like
Django kills people in a Quentin Tarantino movie, or the main character kills people.
So I guess Once Upon a Time, that's not murder porny, is it?
Literally for like not
They broke the cycle?
99% of the movie until like the
So
last.
there's one per. Oh, so the ending is murder porny. Okay.
I guess
So that's just Quentin Tarantino then.
The man does like himself some murder.
He
but
listens to violent
style.
stuff. Speaking of sort of like movies that take a historical point in time but kind of mix it up, like Inglourious Basterds is very different from what actually happened.
Oh yeah, that's like alternate history.
I feel like some of my friends that are into like that kind of topic of like acknowledging an historical like point in history, they always want it to be like 100% faithful to that point, or else what's the point of doing it? And I always kind of disagreed with that, where I feel like it's cooler to do like, I think it's really cool when people do like a stylized version of, not like,
What do you mean? So like
not
is this
necessarily
separate
like
than alternate history?
not
or?
trying to glorify certain points, like not like spaghetti westerns where the main character just kills a whole tribe and it's supposed to be a good thing. That's a little messed up.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like it's cool to have like the setting not necessarily dictate like everything about it. Like have you ever seen the anime Samurai Champloo?
Yeah.
I've seen the first couple episodes. Yeah.
It's set in feudal Japan. I think that's like 1800s Japan, right?
Or it's like kind of late feudal Japan.
Very late. Because there's literally there's an episode. This is why I know why it's late. Is there's a whole episode where the main characters play baseball with American Navy people and on whether or not they forced Japan to open up. There's a whole episode dedicated to that, and I don't think that.
And so like, and the whole thing is like, there's like hip hop in like the whole anime.
The theme is like hip hop style, and the main character like break dances while fighting, but you still have an idea of like what it was like at the time to be in feudal Japan. Like I'm actually not too familiar with that period.
That kind of makes me think a little bit of like the Wolfenstein game. So kind of going back to World War II, it's like Wolfenstein is definitely like alternate history. So we're just fully going alternate history, but like they take it in the whole stereotypical way, which is this I think partly why I love the World War II genre, is like, okay, well, what if the like Nazis won and then they were all about their scientific, advancements and research. So it's like, okay, well, imagine a world that the Nazis won, and then they just invested in all of this crazy ass technology. So like Wolfenstein, there's like giant, like robot things, like monitoring the streets and stuff.
According to the story of the game, it wasn't that they necessarily just invested a lot in technology. It was because they basically took over this Jewish secret society that did technology for it. The game gets weird with that. There's like
there's like a whole secret society that has like alien or
not alien,
not alien,
really
but
good
like
technology.
ultra technology.
Yeah. And then the German scientists like find this group and take their technology and then adapt it.
Oh,
So it's a little weird, but
because I know there's another show called Man in the High Tower. I've only seen the first couple of High Castle. But that's the same thing. It's like, what if the Nazis won? But
then that gets weird because that movie goes into like alternate timelines, and they themselves try to go to a different timeline.
Oh, geez. Okay, I'm kind of glad I didn't.
I heard it's good. Like the first couple seasons are good. I've heard.
Yeah.
It's based on the book too. I speaking of the other side of bad takes on like sort of alternate history things is I read a book called Guns of the South, where like they really tried to make General Lee like a good character. I'm not going to argue whether or not he was a good guy, but in the book, basically these neo-Nazis go back in time and give the South AK-47s. That's the premise of the book.
Oh.
And it's interesting at first. I think they're trying to make it where like the Confederacy is more less evil, but it's kind of hard to do that when slavery is inherently evil. But at the end of the book, they discover why they did what they did, and they take out the neo-Nazis, and then just decide that the Confederacy, after winning the war and becoming independent, just abolishes slavery themselves. I'm like, that is,
Okay, see, yeah, because like, I mean,
yeah, I don't think that was kind of the whole reason like that happened. So
yeah, because that does make it like that makes it seem like it was written from the point of view of someone that maybe believes in some of the more Confederate things, but then they feel bad about the slavery parts. They're like, okay,
No,
well, I'm gonna write
like,
a story.
honestly, it's kind of weird growing up in Texas because for like a lot of like early childhood growing up, that's the way it was always presented to me. Like when you told me about that back in like middle school, I think I didn't even bat an eye at that. I was just like, oh, okay, because
it's cool.
just a quirk of like Texas, I guess, education. It was always presented in either more of a neutral light or even like a, oh, it was all about states' rights or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I know that there obviously were other issues, you know, that were involved in it, but like slavery was like, it's hard to argue that slavery was a huge part of that.
There's no way you could argue that, like, even if Lee was some like pro-abolishment, I don't know if he was or not. I don't know what his view of slavery was.
Don't think he was.
If he himself was passionate about that, I don't think he would be able to do that in the South, because everyone else would be like, what? Why do you think we did this in the first place?
So kind of talking about like alternate history, it makes me think about how do you guys feel about, so like there was a game called like Total Rome or Total War.
I love Total War to death. I've only played Medieval 2 because it's my favorite time period, and also it has this amazing mod that basically puts you in Middle Earth like Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, Total War is great.
So like there was a controversy probably about 2-3 years back where they like increased the chance to have like Rome 2, that's the game. They increased the chance of like women leaders, like the increased chance of having like the leaders be women. And so like a huge part of the player base are like these historical accurate type people, and you know they want their historical accuracy in their video games, so they got mad. They were like, oh, it's anti-SJW, or you know, it's SJW
that
agenda.
Whole, like, rabbit hole.
You know, it was that whole typical, you know, argument, and not going like super into like the politics of it. Like, where do you like draw the line of like an alternate history?
That's the only game where I can see like any kind of argument for that. And like Battlefield 2, it's like, or was it 1 or 2?
Which one are you talking about?
The World War II one where there was a bunch of really...
5.
Yeah, they jump back.
Their name
what the fuck?
Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, you know, that one where it's like, oh, there's women in my World War II shooty game where there's also technology that would have been way past the time, and like so many things that aren't historically accurate. There's no reason why you would draw the line at genders.
Yeah.
Like, the only place where there's even an argument for that is like real historical recreations.
Like
and
Kingdom.
Some people can at least argue that Total War is that, but really it's not. Like, if you want that, you can always mod it in after if it's that big of a deal for you.
Yeah, because I remember
like,
that was a big... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quickly, that was actually a big thing. Was there was someone made a mod that like reverted it back, like the women still couldn't be leaders or whatever, and so all the company, they were like, guys, there's a mod, go download that mod if you want it, if you want less women leaders, but like it's here to stay.
Right.
But that was a whole part of the argument. But sorry, yeah.
Yeah, like video games, like unless it's very specifically marketing itself as, this is a accurate recreation of this historical time period. Yeah. There's no reason why you can't make it more accessible to people, I don't think.
I definitely agree. The only time
I do think the Southern isms. Please continue.
The one game where, I put my foot down a little bit. Not even put my foot down. That's a stupid saying for this, but
put like toe down.
I put my gamer fuel down.
Yeah, I put my NOS energy drink down. That's all around. I don't know. But
I never got energy drinks for gaming. Like, it's not that energy intensive.
Yeah, you're just sitting down.
Yeah.
You don't need your heart rate like pounding.
Yeah, I remember I drank like one of those once when I was doing like I was doing something physically strenuous, and I thought, wow, I feel like I'm about to have a fucking heart attack. Why would I ever want to drink this when I'm not doing anything?
Now, if an energy drink company wants to sponsor us, we didn't say any of this. Like,
Right, we love
it.
Monster Energy.
And Nos, I drink
Energy,
10 before I go to
Bang
bed
Energy.
every day.
I do as well. It helps me.
But we
wake up
completely
in the morning.
derailed
It's when
what you
like
were
the
gonna
Final
say.
Fantasy remake comes out and you want to spend like you want to get off work for a day and spend like the first 24 hours of the game playing it. That's when NOS is useful. Is
Alright.
not necessarily for when you're working out or like putting labor and getting the energy back. Like it's not really.
But when
back.
you need to just literally
Just stay
force
up.
your body
Yeah.
to unhealthily stay up longer.
Yeah.
But okay, so when did you put your gamer fuel down?
Not really. Again, it was when
Not
Kotaku
gamer fuel.
made an
it's gamer
article on
oil.
that Kingdom game where
Oh yeah.
they were complaining about the lack of POC characters just in the world of Central Europe during the 1300s. And it's just like,
Yeah,
I guess, but no one.
because I was gonna say that the kind of way I approach it. Oh, good.
I don't know what a POC character is. What's
Like
that?
person of color.
Personal color as well.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just abbreviating.
I just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
You're good.
So, but like the whole thing, the way I approach it is like that Kingdom Deliverance game. I think is what it's called. The whole point of that game and the whole like the way it was advertised was hyper realistic, historical like setting.
Right.
So like in situations like that, like I think it's fair because you don't even get to customize your character. in
no,
that character.
you play a certain character.
Yeah, I will say that like any time that you can customize your character, even if it was in that Kingdom Deliverance game, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if like you could make your character black in like Kingdom Deliverance because at a certain point, if it's just your character, that's not affecting anyone else's game. You know what I mean?
No.
But like not having like like characters that aren't in that historical accuracy.
One
that's another
thing, or one like I guess game that did it, I think, kind of maturely was it's this game called Mountain Blade Warband, I think.
Oh, okay.
And basically, you're allowed to play as a woman, but it basically tells you like, hey, you're allowed to. The game is going to be harder, but you are free to. And like, if you want historical accuracy, but you also want to make your game hyper realistic, I think that's kind of a nice compromise where you're giving people what they want, but you're saying, certain aspects of it are still going to be.
See, I think
like
Crusader Kings is the same thing, where like you could play a woman, but with just the laws of the game, like with the default laws, makes it harder for you to get power.
because it's like a whole patriarchal.
Yeah. But you can change the laws eventually.
you can.
Because like, well, see, because like, that's like the whole thing where it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, should we make developers? It's kind of going to the same argument of like, should developers be like not required, but like, should developers feel the need to like make like an easy mode for difficult games? Like, should there be a easy mode for a game like Dark Souls? That's like a kind of similar argument of like.
I do feel strongly that for Dark Souls, you can't make that game easy. Well, there's already an easy mode. It's called summons. You can summon people and they'll play the game for you. That's not the problem
That's
here.
fair.
But like something like Dark Souls is hard by design, in my opinion. A bit off topic though.
But so, because like I guess it just like because in that game the Mountain Blade Warband or totally butchering the name probably, but like I could just see like if I was a female and I wanted to play as a female and then like I had to have the game
it's just like okay,
be harder,
Right. And for like any other game where it's not trying to say it's some kind of accurate or like ultra accurate description, and Mountain Blade Warband certainly isn't ultra accurate, but it does try and be accurate.
Technically a fantasy setting too. I found out.
It's basically like medieval Europe, but on a different continent.
Yeah.
So like, it's all very direct analogs. You have kind of your Slavic country analog. You have your Scandinavian country analog. You have your Middle European analog. But like, it's all pretty much supposed to be Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just like one of those things where it's like, I feel like you can never, like even if you have a setting, so I feel like even in that game, if they had decided to make a setting that you had to turn on that said, even if I play a woman, I want it to be just as easy as it was
I think
if I
a
was a man.
setting would be a good way to do that.
But like, I think that would still anger people, honestly. Like I can
But
still
people are going to
see-
get angry no matter what you do.
It just seems like a lose-lose. Like
Yeah, no, I agree.
in terms of the whole historical.
Everyone gets angry about everything.
Let's go.
Outrage culture.
And it's like people, it's like you can. It's one thing to be like annoyed or be like angry and just be like, I'm angry.
But like, yeah, making just an any period piece now, it's difficult because you might want to remain faithful just to show how brutal some people had it in certain points in time. But at the same time, you also like sometimes you want to just have like a black character in your 40s detective thriller, but then there's always gonna be these assholes like, if that character was in the game thing, they'd just be dismissed the whole time. It's like, yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is how it worked back then. We are not in back then.
Yeah.
We are in now, and we're making a made-up game with a completely made-up plot
Yeah,
for people to enjoy.
yeah.
And that's like with like games like Battlefield, because like there's a whole nother part of this of like multiplayer games where you customize your character, because we've been pretty much talking about single player games. So the debate is whether, oh, this other person's game is ruining my game even though you're not playing with each other. But with a multiplayer game, like the way I see it is the way I would like it with Battlefield and stuff like that, like with the new Battlefields with like having the like, see, maybe in the campaign they should see, I don't know, it's just like it's such a conflicting thing, because I think in multiplayer you should be able to customize however the hell you want, you know what I mean? Because it's just totally unrealistic already. I mean, there's blimps like flying, like like jump, I don't know, but
You know
like
what they should
flying
do?
and
They
jumping.
should make a low poly white guy soldier and give you the option for all character models to be like this low poly Half-Life 1 looking character. No, that's
that would
dumb.
be so jarring in like hyper realistic like Battlefield 5 ultra settings. You just see one of the characters like running around and like, or like a Lara Croft character where her like tits are like a pyramid or whatever. Like
That would be really, really jarring.
I guess another game I want to talk about, Mafia.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's a cool
I think
like.
we talked
it's
about it
basically
in the Prime one.
Yeah, GTA, but like in the Mafia times and Mafia times, like
Mafia
1940s, 1940s, and that period's cool because I always love like that early American period. Like there was a lot of different immigrants for a lot of different European countries, and so you had like Italian gangs, mob, and you had the Irish mob, and you had I think there was a Jewish mob too, and that's like Mafia was about.
it was all the different like mobs like,
Yeah.
fighting after each other.
Mainly just Italians, because apparently Italians just. I always just thought it was just like Italian American crime syndicates that were powerful at the time, but apparently, just like in Sicily, like actual Italy, the mob was also just super super powerful. I did not know that until recently.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely probably like one of those things where, like, because we're in America and like the crime genre is such a like our last episode, plug, but like
Watch it, or else.
yes, or we're gonna bust a cap.
Holden's watched The Wire. He won't hesitate.
Yes, I have a wire. Okay, the joke's bad.
You do have a wire.
I do have a wire on me. But like, I think it's just probably one of those things where it's like we're not exposed to like, because there probably are a ton of movies and like TV shows, and maybe more in Italy about like their own
Yeah.
mobs and stuff like that.
I'm trying to think of cool movies that highlight interesting time periods of time. Any like, there's some cool like, probably like not too many people have seen like feudal Japan movies. I know that is a pretty popular genre now, but like I feel like that's something I need to watch, like Seven Samurai.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen any feudal Japan movies.
A lot of there was like this movie, the something seven. There was a Western movie about seven guys.
Oh, it was
and
like the serious. Is that the? No, Hateful Eight was Quentin Tarantino one.
That's a parody. There was a movie called The Spectacular Seven or something, and it was literally inspired from Seven Samurai, which is seven samurai protecting a town from something, and then they made a Western off of that. And I find that so cool that you could make a style like plot of like a whole different setting from an old one.
That's kind of like going back to what you were saying of like where maybe don't do something like alternate history, but take history, but then just change the setting.
Yeah.
Or change like stuff
Historical
like that.
settings are cool like that. You can take like basically the same plot, but just put it in a different setting. And because like of the intricacies of so many settings, like so much about that plot will change and it'll be new and interesting in spite of a lot of the major beats not really changing.
That's what I was trying to go in when I first talked about this, is with the historical setting is you can kind of subtly feed people what it was like to live back then, rather than just a boring lecture about what it was like to lose your hand as a child laborer in the early 18th. Again,
it was
talk about
shit. It was so good.
But
man, to be back in the good old days when I could lose a few fingers and not get paid for it.
You just have a bunch of children have
Die
a
of 14 of
I watched-
colon or
I watched a movie
black lung.
today, actually.
I think that's all right.
That had a historical setting. There Will Be Blood, which did I talk about already?
I think a little
You
bit.
talked about it with me in the hallway,
Yeah.
but you haven't talked about it in the podcast.
But it's about like a oil, like a sort of up and coming oil baron that like found land in I'm gonna say in Texas because it makes sense if it was Texas. But like it kind of highlights like in the first act of the movie, like some guy just dies because he was like in the tunnel where the oil was, and the people on top dropped like this equipment and just hit him in the head, and he just went into the oil, and the guy goes, clean him up, we'll talk about it tomorrow, and then that's it. And it's just like, damn, like it kind of tells you how like labor laws were back then. Now that whole thing would be shut down or something. Like and the boss would be like, shit.
Well, you want to hear something scary? A lot of like oil pipelines, they still have pretty shitty health and safety. Like OSHA's a thing, yeah, but they don't really follow it. This is all hearsay from Kayla's brother Kevin. But like, those spout things? You need people to go up and fix them or whatever, change some piping. Sometimes they'll light on fire while people are up there, and there's this whole harness set that's a pain in the ass to get on, but basically you can just either cut or release whatever cord you have and you'll drop down safely. But most people don't bother with that because like it's really, really hard to get on and get off in time. So people just burn.
They're
like
just really. Oh, sorry.
it's the fringes of society a lot of times are like a little bit behind on like safety laws.
The other thing I want to talk about in the movie that was really cool, powerful. There's a shot in the movie towards the middle of it where they actually hit like a point in the ground where like a lot of oil came up, and it came up with gas spewing in the air, and eventually the oil lit and it was just spewing fire, and it was burning down the whole little structure they had for it. And the main character was happy. He was like, dude, this is awesome, while the whole thing was burning. And like,
Why was he happy?
because oil was there. He found oil. But it was just this cool shot of him being like, yeah, I'm gonna be rich. But at the same time, like his son, spoiler alert, in that movie, gets death because of that explosion. Like he was there.
Dang.
But he's just sitting there, and like it's just, yeah, that's how business was run.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting is like,
God, we live in a time with labor laws. Holy.
yeah, because I forget just child labor in factories and oh my gosh. But like, what's kind of cool is like all of these things, like all of these really terrible historical things. Another cool thing that you can do with the historical genre is just like we're saying, replace the setting of the historical thing. You can replace it with like future. So you could do something like that where you take the whole scene you just talked about, the oil rig, and have it be like some like futuristic thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can just say, oh, well, shit gets bad in the future. And like you can kind of draw parallels. You can kind of make people like think about previous historical settings or like themes by just making it almost seem like fantasy by going super into the future.
A lot of like of those space opera politics are usually inspired from real life politics. Like George Lucas came out and said like straight up the rebels are supposed to be an analog similar to like the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. And you can kind of see that. And then later on he tries to do the whole George Bush war thing with the prequels, and people didn't really do it well, but he tried.
Yeah.
I didn't know those were supposed to be analogs. Interesting.
And it's just, yeah, it's so interesting because that's what you can do with the, like with history. Like, I think one of the things you said in one of the previous episodes was you were saying that, you know, most of the time, like real life is crazier than like fiction.
Yep.
So like, what better to do than take something that literally happened in the past, just give it a fresh new coat of paint, and then there you go. It seems like you just invented, you know, Star Wars. It seems like he did this whole thing, you know, and I'm not making it sound like he didn't put a lot of effort in, but you know, like he just took from history because like history is crazy.
I mean, to be fair with that, that's probably more inspiration than
Well, yeah.
actual like event.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But like you probably could just take like these historical things and just, you know, switch out the setting and stuff. So, well, I guess I'm trying to think. We're probably running a little bit low on time, but like are there any other like historical like settings or things that you guys think we missed or anything like that?
Does this count as a redo since we've talked about the Western genre before?
See, that's the thing. There's so many like overlapping. That's one of the things we like have to focus on a lot is because there's so many like interlap. Like when we were talking about crime genre, we were like, oh, we already talked about heists. Heists are a crime. So it's like, ultimately, that's why we're just trying to like, when we do a genre, just hyper focus on it. But we're
We
gonna
probably couldn't have gone more broad than all of history.
yeah, we did kind of make it a little bit easy. And then
That's fine. We'll go into specifics later.
Narcos is a cool period piece on like just the early like drug war.
Yeah.
War on drugs of just the first guy that really hit the hammer on the coke trade and like blew up.
Yeah. And if
like,
you oh, sorry, go ahead.
Uncontrolled Capitalism Part 2.
But like he was like on the top 100 of some magazine technically, but he was also like a drug lord, and I find that funny as hell.
Yeah, and like we talked about probably for like 10 minutes, Narcos on our crime episode of podcast. So here's where all the overlapping goes. We get to just plug everything. Go check out the crime episode if you haven't.
That's the thing. I want to point out other like cool niche points in history, but I can't think of too many. I know there's both a South African and a Australian setting Western, and that seems cool to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think for me, like alternate history is probably just like the coolest like thing. What?
Matthew's double jointed and is popping his thumb back.
I did.
That's completely besides
I
for the podcast. I was shocked for a second.
You know, historically,
You looked
people
horrified.
Yeah, you looked like you were.
I saw a ghost, man.
But okay.
Ghost of your last joint.
And yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Real
go ahead.
quick, I want to tell people about. I'm not sure if I've already talked about this on the podcast. There's a show on Netflix called The Last Kingdom, where it's like basically I think it's historical fiction, but it's probably inspired by some kind of real events, called The Last Kingdom. It's basically like Game of Thrones set in very, very early medieval age England, before England was even a thing, and they were just a bunch of like territories. Like
Before or after Vikings invaded England?
After.
Okay.
So it's still like, you know, Wessex and East Anglia. And,
Ooh, yeah. But before the Normans?
I don't know if the Normans had invaded yet.
Okay.
Or,
if it was,
don't think the Normans have invaded yet.
Because I think England was technically one country when. Okay, whatever. Besides the
All
point.
right, definitely before the Normans. Then, yeah,
But yeah. So
it's a good show. You should watch it.
hell yeah. And if you guys like are watching this on YouTube and we missed out on your favorite like historical period or movie or TV show, definitely let us know in the comments. And if you're listening, go on YouTube and leave us a comment. But either way, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Dankjewel.